to become leader of the Conservative Party and Canada's next Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Roman Barber.
Thank you so much. My name is Roman Barber. I'm delighted to be in Victoria. We had a beautiful morning and a wonderful breakfast, and I'm so happy to see so many of my friends again. You may have heard that about a year and a half ago, I was removed by Premier Doug Ford for opposing the lockdown. I judged that our public health response was causing a lot more harm than good, and I wasn't going to have it anymore. And that's what I wish to restore to government and public service, is that we're finally able to trust the political process to put Canadians first. And a lot of you might not agree with me on everything I have to say, but that's okay, that's democracy. But you will always know where I stand. The reason why I'm in this race, the reason why I ask you to join me and campaign with me and work with me, is so we can restore every single freedom for every single Canadian. Nothing else will do. I'm very, very concerned about the erosion of Canada's democracy. Some of you know that I was born in the former Soviet Union, and we didn't get our freedom until 1989 when the whole thing started crashing down. And I see some similarities, regretfully, and I'm scared, knowing how fragile our democracy is. You know, one of the defining elements of a communist regime is when the narrative is false and government engages in remarkable action that's predicated on a false narrative. We knew as early as May 2020 that most of the risk is in long-term care homes. We knew that the virus is so transmissible that most of the metrics we were worried about are actually not as worrisome as we thought they were, but we didn't change our public health response and continued to treat the virus as if it was March or April 2020. At that moment, government stopped being frank with us, and it continued to engage in remarkable action. And when it does so, it can do so without limit. It can continue for as long as it wants, or do what it wants, and that isn't right. That's why I think that the most important thing we have to insist on from our elected officials is to restore integrity to government. It's so simple. It's basic integrity. But there are other similarities. In the Soviet Union, you could not fly between the republics or exit or enter Canada freely. To see now that more than 15% of Canadians are unable to board a plane or a train, 3.5 million Canadians cannot board a plane, that should upset not just 3.5 million Canadians, that should upset 35 million Canadians. I think that mobility rights are not just charter rights, they're human rights. And to know that so many Canadians are afraid of their own government because not only do they suffer an erosion of their civil liberties, but also they cannot enter and exit freely must frighten them. To know that a Canadian would be afraid of their own federal government is reason enough to get rid of Justin Trudeau. Same with the mandate. I think that it's inhumane. It's inhumane to make someone choose between their personal health and their ability to put food on the table. That's why I brought the only legislation that I'm familiar to date, the Jobs and Jobs Act, to protect workers against workplace mandates, and shame on the Doug Ford government for voting it down. It would have been model legislation for the entire country. We have to fight and we have to articulate a very common sense propositions for all those Canadians that are suffering 21st century unprecedented segregation that will be a stain on our country's history forever. We know that 2 shots offer minimal protection against infection, even according to the manufacturer. So any suggestion that anyone's risk of transmission is higher because the risk of infection is higher is false. No one's putting anyone at risk. No one's putting anyone at risk. It's a hateful proposition that we have to oppose, and we have to be sensible. A lot of Canadians are counting on us to reach out to them as well. So I welcome you on our journey to restore dignity to all Canadians everywhere. And how do we restore Canada's democracy? By preserving the most precious right on them all, and that's our freedom of speech. Freedom of speech expression is the holy grail of all rights, because through speech we protect all other rights, and not just speech at the square, from which we were banned for a couple of years. Speech online. I'm going to take a crack at social media monopolies. There's absolutely no reason that social media monopolies that are supposed to be platforms are now acting as content filters, and we have the right to be wrong. What happened to our right to, be wrong but still defend each other's right to say it, I'm going to initiate an antitrust proceeding where I'm going to ensure that our freedom of speech online is going to be protected. I'm going to, thank you. We have to defend regulated professionals. If doctors and other regulated health professionals especially were not gagged, were not threatened into submission to speak, we would have been out of this mess potentially years ago. And finally, there is no free speech without free and independent media. There just isn't. How can media be objective? How can it cover government when the government signs the media's paycheck? It's utterly impossible. So, we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, we're going to defund the CBC on day one. That's easy. That's easy. We have to end all bailouts and subsidies. And I'm going to go a step further. We have to regulate and end the way that government advertises on media. Government is keeping media afloat. There's no free and independent media until we end all financial dependency by media on government. That's going to be my first and foremost priority. I'm going to defend the freedom of speech. That's how we're going to defend our democracy. I'm so grateful to the Freedom Movement for galvanizing so many Canadians. What we saw in Ottawa was hundreds of thousands, if not more, Canadians that came to articulate a message. Shame on the Prime Minister for not having the courage to even meet with them. And everything that Justin Trudeau said about the truckers was false. There were no weapons. There was very little foreign funding, not more than 10%. There was no foreign collusion, and the arson was not connected. February 18th will go down as one of the worst days in our country's history when government turned on peaceful protesters. But I also think it was a beautiful day because what we saw is freedom-loving people that did not oppose. There was no resistance. There was no violence. We saw on February 18th that it was a truly peaceful movement. God bless them for giving so many Canadians a voice. Which brings me to the future of this freedom movement. It's great that we protest, it's great that we post on social media and we talk to our friends, but we have an opportunity here. I do not see another way out of this mess other than political. I just don't see it. The courts are disjointed. The media is not going to own up to it. We're not going to gain our freedom of speech back on social media. The only way out of this is the old-fashioned way. It's at the ballot box. And there's enough of us, there's enough freedom-loving Canadians that just want to work hard, love their families, and have government leave us alone. That's it, just leave us alone. But we can't accomplish it if we're not united. And that starts with the freedom movement. We all have a different flavor of freedom, and that's okay. We can agree on 9 out of 10 things, that's okay. We have to come together. And we have to focus on a political opportunity. And right now, we have an opportunity to play a major role in the Conservative Party of Canada race. Let's present a major force in this party to make sure that they never do this to us again. I have to run in this race and I have to win it because we have to shake them up. We have to ask them, where have you been for the last 2 years? Why did you not stand up for Canadians? When I'm elected leader, I will apologize to all Canadians that the Conservative Party did not stand up for you. And I'll bring back all of you who voted for another party because we can't beat Justin Trudeau, we can't beat Chrystia Freeland unless we're all united. So I'm asking all of you, thank you. Thank you. I am here in good faith. I've been fighting this fight for 2 years where it was very difficult, and I'll always make sure that we stand on principle and we do what's right even when it's unpopular. The deadline to register this Friday. Play a role in this race. Register, either on the Conservative side to vote or at my site at joinroman.ca. I'd be very, very grateful to lead our party and our country. God bless you. Thank you.